Hey yo, welcome back to another episode of the most authentic and nuanced holistic health and fitness podcast hosted by your favorite crunchy strength and conditioning coach. And today we are going over my first 50K race recap. I'm giving you the inside details of my very first 50K of the year, and just like see how I'm doing a little check-in with myself. It is, again, kind of weird to like not have a podcast co-host and just like sit here and talk to my camera, my computer, but I know people are invested. And I heard from Chris Loves Julia, which is like an Instagram handle account. They also do some like influencer like information stuff, and they did put it out one time, like, if somebody is following you, they expect information. Like, they have an expectation of you to follow through with information. So give it to them. Don't have imposter syndrome when it comes to giving information. And so I am just giving the information. And if you want to hear it, then you're here listening to it. So I'm working on delivering in that way. So couple cool things, insights. But yeah, okay, so it is currently March 5th, Tuesday, March 5th. My last race was February 17th, I believe. So it was about 2 weeks ago. I ran a 50K race. It was up in Roaring Gap, North Carolina. I ran the Roaring Gap 50K. And this particular race, I've never done a race that was loops, like multiple loops. And at first, when I first purchased this race, I wasn't like super excited about it because when it's loops, there can be a tendency to just be like, well, that will be easy because you will know what's coming. But I knew that like the only reason I was going to go do this race anyways was because it was going to be like a training run, and just use that as mileage and time on my feet, time on my legs, practice my nutrition. And that's what it ended up being. So I'm really actually glad that it was loops. It was 4 8-mile loops. So it ended up coming out to be 32 miles. And my race strategy went great. My plan was great. My running coach, George, and I talked a lot the day before, and I can kind of give you the timeline of everything. I'll tell you my clothing and how I did my nutrition plan, all of it. So let's back up a little bit. The week before my race, which I was like coming down off of a taper week, my last podcast I did when I was talking about my birthday, that was my last like big training week. And then it was like I was tapering after that. And that week right before my race, I actually had a work conference I had to go to down at Moody Air Force Base, which was like an 8-hour drive from where I live. And it was going to be like a 10-hour drive from the conference up to my race. So I was like, okay, I need to figure out the logistics of this. I just had like a lot of driving to do because like the way that it was set up, we couldn't fly. So what I did was I drove down to my conference, which was I drove Monday that week, conference Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Luckily, I work in strength conditioning and I have like the Taj Mahal of gyms always available to me, and very nice Woodway. Excuse me, I got a little something in my throat. Woodway treadmills, which are like $5,000 to $7,000 each, and I had a plethora of them to train on during the week and like shake out my legs and prepare. A couple of things I did like very specifically and deliberately that week leading up to my race was, granted, we get like per diem, and I knew I was going to have probably some like socials and networking things that I would have to do. So I knew that I probably couldn't bank on like super good dinners, but I did take some of my per diem and go to the grocery store, and I really prioritized the protein and carb sources that I had normally been eating, which like I grabbed cottage cheese and deli meat and cheese sticks and fruit and like yogurt and coconut water and foods that I really like, that I find really tasty, easy to eat, easy to digest. And so like that week at the conference, I really prioritized like bringing my snacks with me. And I'm going to get on a soapbox really quick. I was like, honestly, at the conference the entire time, I was trying to decide if I was going to be super catty or if I was going to be like respectful and not put anybody on blast. And granted, I'm doing it now, but even less people listen to my podcast. And when I was at the conference, which was put on, the Human Performance Optimization Conference, put on by like one of like the higher echelons of the unit that I work for, they were like, we're bringing you breakfast every day. And I was like, oh, that's great. I don't have to use my per diem to get breakfast. Well, when we get there every day, it's a bunch of strength coaches who are a bunch of meatheads. And what do they give us for breakfast? Like croissants, cinnamon rolls, muffins, and donuts for breakfast. And immediately I was like, where are the protein sources? Where are the animal sources? None. Nothing. Every single day. And so all these strength coaches, like during the conference, were like nodding off, sleeping. Their blood sugar was crashing. They were starving. And who was the little nerd alert sitting in the crowd with a bag of deli meat? Me, because I had a race coming up and I need to prioritize it. It wasn't perfect. I'll just say that. Like we went out to like a little Top Golf situation and I left like an hour early. And I was like, you know what? Am I taking like a social or networking hit because I'm leaving early? Probably. But I've trained so hard for my race, I can't jack it up. So, fun things during that week. I definitely prioritize my sleep. I just said that I left a social and networking event early so that I could like prioritize that. I also had my Normatec boots that I checked out from work. So I was like recovering my legs. I worked out in the weight room that the conference was in. And I also went to like the hotel gym. So I really put a lot in place to set myself up for success, mainly because I was nervous. Not because I was like doubting my training, but I was just like nervous about how it was going to go. So I was down at Moody Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. My parents live like kind of halfway between where the conference was at and where the race was at. So Thursday, left the conference a little bit early, drove up to my parents. And then when I was at my parents' house, like my mom like cooked me dinner, met my husband there at my parents' house because like we all wanted to see each other. And then Friday morning, drove up to the race, got a hotel, went to Walmart, got more coconut water and all my little snackies and my chewies and like, my little candies that I want to carry. And like, then my husband got me a sandwich at like a local food hall. And I love a good like Italian sub. And I knew that was going to like be fine on my stomach the night before. So that night before the race, I ate an Italian sub. It was amazing. And I'm also noticing on my podcast, I say, it's amazing. Too much. I'm working on it. I'm also speaking at 2 conferences this year. At least that's the plan and the goal. And so I am currently working on not saying like and So I'm going to make a point to practice that on this podcast. So I ate a sub the night before, drank a lot of coconut water. I planned out my race. I also had individual loop Ziploc baggies for my husband to use every time I came and finished a loop, and he had to like refill my pack and my bottles. And so on the baggie, I had it listed like what lap it was for, what he should say. I said, dang it, trying so hard. But on my Instagram, I went over my race plan, which was the first loop, I was going to learn the course. Just like enjoy it, learn it, absorb it, don't fight it, learn it. Second loop was like make friends with the course, like really lean on my gratitude and just accept the course for what it is and realize like I signed up for it, I trained for it. Like not a lot of people do trail racing because it's difficult. Not a lot of people get to the top of a mountain and get to experience that. Like just accept it and love it. Third loop, I knew that if I wasn't going to focus, third loop is probably where the wheels were going to fall off. So I really had to double down. And then the third loop, I wanted to accept the course, meaning like I just wanted to not fight it and I not get irritated, not get angry. I talked a lot about that with George, my running coach, the night before, like when I was driving to my parents' house, or Thursday when I was driving to my parents' house, he was like, Kels, like, you don't need to be angry, because it's kind of like a reoccurring theme that him and I have talked about. Like, I just get really intense, really angry when I'm on the trail. And he's like, you don't need to be angry. Like, you signed up for this. Like, you talk about being so grateful for it. Like, lean into that. And I was like, I know I just become like a Tasmanian devil. And he's like, then you need to be friends with your Tasmanian devil. Like, you don't need to be angry. Like, accept that you're intense and be intense, but you don't need to like hate what you're doing in the moment. Like, you don't need to slit people's throats when you're on the trail. Like, you chose to be there. And I was like, this is good. This is good. So if you need even more reasons to like hire a coach, like I am a coach and I still need somebody like talk me off a ledge and like speak to me in affirming and strong and confident ways. And George is doing that for me. So it's I can't think of enough. So third loop, like be friend, accept the course. Like don't fight it. Don't get angry. Like you can get focused, but you don't need to become like an angry ball of fire. And then fourth lap was like crush the course. Like that's when your time is to compete. And George and I's like plan and mentality going into the race was like very similar, very paralleled in regards to just like terminology was maybe a little bit different, but very similar. So like that was kind of my 4-step process. His was composure, confidence, compete. And so the first lap or two, like I need to maintain my composure. It can be very easy to just be out there and like either be super excited or super sad or like super grateful and like, you know, you don't stick to your race plan, or super angry and irritated, or you're so bothered by your blisters that like you ditch your race plan. And so I wanted to I wanted to keep my composure, especially the first 2 laps. Third lap for him is like be confident. Like be confident in your training. You know, go for it. Keep moving forward, and keep moving forward with your race plan. Oh, that was kind of my third lap, was like keep the course, like keep the plan, just keep it. Don't let the wheels fall off. Keep with the nutrition plan that you had in place. And so that was his kind of confidence, like maintain your confidence. Third for him was compete. And that is a very fine like switch and lever for me, because I can almost like go out of the gate wanting to compete, but you can't compete for 32 miles. At least I can't. Like I'm not in that type of like fitness shape. And that's not like, I'm still an amateur novice runner in regards to trail running. And I need to find that fine balance between confidence and compete. And so the fourth lap, about halfway through the fourth lap, I was able to kind of turn on that compete mode, and it went awesome. I was so proud of how I finished and just like how I felt and everything. So night before, had an Italian sub. That night, I also took some sleepy time tea, did the Normatec boots. We had 2 queen beds in the hotel room, and we slept in separate beds because I really wanted good sleep. And woke up that morning. I think the race started at 8, and I woke up around 5:30. That's just because that's the normal time that I wake up for like work. So I felt like that was an easy, like, just keep with my routine, because my body, like other things that you don't even think about unless you're trail racing, is like you like it would be nice to sleep until 6:30, but like my digestion is not ready for 6:30. Like when I wake up at 5:30, like I am ready to have a bowel movement, and if I miss that, then I'm going to want to use the restroom on the trail, and that's a no-no for me. Like if you feel like you have to poop while you're running 30 miles, it's horrible. Horrible. So I was like, okay, I just need to stick with my rhythms of the morning. Wake up, use the restroom, drink a little water, have a coffee, eat a little food. I ate one of those like Kodiak cake oatmeal things that you can warm up in the microwave with some honey, and I had some coconut water. I went outside, did a little dynamic warm up, got to the state park around 7:15, got my race packet, did another little warm up, went pee. And okay, I'll talk a little bit about like what I decided to wear. The temperature was probably low 20s, and very windy. So part of the race was like very windy and cold. And then the back half of the race was like on the backside of the mountain where the sun was. It was very still. So it was pretty warm. So I knew during the race, like my temperature of my body was going to be fluctuating a lot because of just like those 2 different temperaments, like where you are on the trail. But I decided, okay, I wore my Topo mountain racers, which I don't think I've even talked about on my Instagram yet, but I did switch from my Hoka Speed Goats to my Topo mountain racers because the toe box was a lot bigger and it was a lot better for my Achilles, and I've really enjoyed them. So if you're into like wanting a trail shoe, Topo mountain racer, like I cannot recommend it enough. It's amazing. I don't know if I'll change back to anything else. And it's amazing. So I wore those. I wore my Swiftwick like half calf socks because you always want to wear longer socks on the trails, especially for like, burrs or weeds or bugs or sand. Like you always want to wear longer socks. Do not make that mistake and wear short socks when you're like running in sand. It's horrible. Or water. Like you don't want that. So I wore my Swiftwick socks. I wore my full length Lululemon Align leggings. I believe they're like 25 inches, but I'm only 5 feet tall. So those are like full length for me. And then I took Body Glide and I lubed every crevice of my feet, my ankles, the backs of my heels, the balls of my feet, everything. I lubed every single inch of my feet. I did not want blisters. And then for my upper half, I actually wore my Smart Wool, like merino wool long sleeve shirt because I knew it was going to be super breathable. It would take the bite out of the wind, but it was still going to be breathable. And I did start with my wind jacket over the top, but once I got to the backside of the mountain on the first loop, I took my wind jacket off and just stuffed it in my pack. And that's like the best part of having a wind jacket. It's like so compactable. So even if you don't want to wear it or it's like raining or something, like it's very easy to put on, very easy to pack away, very light, adds no weight to your pack. It's awesome. So started off with my wind jacket. Then obviously I have my Solomon running pack. I have the Advanced Skin 5, and I started each loop. Got to do the math here. We started each loop. Oh, I also started with my beanie on, my Carhartt beanie. After the first loop, I switched to my Cotopaxi hat. But each loop, I had a liter of water in the back, the main back bladder, with electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium in the back. In the front, with my 2 little bottles, I had one bottle that had 25 grams of carbs from Tailwind. The other bottle had, I think, more electrolytes. And then each loop I consumed at minimum. This was my race plan. At minimum, I was consuming 2 spring energy gels. And those spring energy gels each of them have 45 grams of carbs. And they are made from like real food. These are the most like quote unquote like a real food goos like I can ever recommend. They are made from like applesauce, apples, juice, rice, and like I don't know, coconut water or something. Like they're real food. They're not just made out of like fructose or glucose or maltodextrin that like a lot of the other gels or goos are made out of, which can really hurt your stomach. So I cannot recommend Spring Energy Gels enough. They are incredible. I use them for my race. I consumed 9 of them on my race, and I consume them every hour during my training runs. So I'm still eating them. I do not get sick of them. And they have a little cinnamon in them. So like apple cinnamon. They're good. So every loop I consumed, which every 2 hours, that was kind of my plan, is like every 2 hours I'll do one loop, which puts me at about a 15-minute pace, including the climbing. Okay, so like road paces and trail paces are very different. But if I can do a 15-minute pace, including the climbing, it'll be about a 2-hour loop, 4 loops. That puts me at 8 hours. My goal was under 9 hours, including like my aid station stops. And I finished at 8:42. So I really did stick to my plan. I was super happy about it. And so every time I came in, my husband refilled my water bladders, refilled my Tailwind powder, gave me my goos to put into my pack. And then like every other loop, I also ate chips. Like having salt and vinegar chips was like such a good change up because when you're eating carbs, like it's usually really sweet and you can get really sick of that. So I ate a lot of salt and vinegar chips, which was like really good on the palate. And yeah, and then I would say at the start of like, okay, let me go over my mindset, like what really happened. I gave you my race plan, but what really happened? I was so happy and so excited laps 1 and 2. like so proud of myself. I was cruising. I was comfortable. Like nothing was bothering me. I was also very nervous about my Achilles because I had talked about that a lot before. And I'm not even kidding you. I felt the prayers the day of. I did not have one Achilles problem the entire race. I don't know how that happened. Well, I do know how it happened. The Lord, I tell you, he helped me out that day in your prayers. So did not have any issues. And so laps 1 and 2 felt so good. My body felt great. Beginning of lap 3, I took 2 Tylenols. So I think that was like 500 milligrams of Tylenol. So I was like, okay, this lap 3 is going to be difficult going into the climbing. Because like each loop was 8 miles, but the first 4 miles of each loop was climbing. The last 4 miles was like downhill, a lot of stairs downhill. And then you end the loop on like 300 plus stairs like each time. It was very hard. And excuse me. So, took some Tylenol beginning of lap 3 because my left IT band running down in my left like knee, like the lateral side of my knee, really started to bother me. And I actually got some treatment on it today. And so I know some more things I can work on, which is like more lateral work, glute work, hip extension work. So I'll be adding in a lot of that for my training. And took some Tylenol because I just had to like manage that pain a little bit. And obviously in my like crunchy, like ancestral eating and living side, I know what Tylenol does to my body, like how bad it can be for you. But in the performance setting, like if you are like, if you're at that point where you are competing and you need to deliver, take the Tylenol, take the ibuprofen, take the naproxen, like it is what it is. And you only understand that desperate need for something like unless you have been a competitor to some extent. Because if you're only living in the crunchy space and you're not considering that nuanced approach that I always talk about, then you're always going to be like pointing fingers at people like you're not real crunchy or like you're not blah, blah, blah. But the reality is like there's got to be a balance. That's the whole point. So anyways, took some Tylenol beginning of lap 3. My husband ran lap 3 with me, so that was really good because I knew he was like I was pretty excited to show him like the beautiful parts of the race. So the first 4 miles climbing of lap 3, like I was like, okay, you know, my lower body's really starting to feel it. My glutes, my quads are really starting to feel fatigued. So that was like miles 16 to 20. 16 to 20 where my legs were starting to feel pretty heavy. My mental low point was from 20 to 24 because I was like, okay, I have 8 to 12 miles left. I don't know if I'm going to finish it. And that is the point, going back to George's race plan of confidence, where it's like, Kelsey, you have to be confident in the moment that you can complete this. And that's what pushes you one, mile to the next. And so, miles 2024 were definitely my low point. Another thing that George really talked about was like, and which is like really reflective of the military, is like when something goes wrong, you have to troubleshoot. You can't just like sit and be like, it's wrong. My race plan is garbage. Like you can't do that. You have to troubleshoot. And so in that moment, I was like, when I could tell my mental game was starting to lower and drop, I was like, I have to troubleshoot this mental game. Another analogy that like I had in the moment was like, Kelsey, buoy yourself back up to the surface, like pull yourself back out, like don't just keep diving deeper and deeper and deeper, like buoy yourself back up to the top. So in that moment when I was like troubleshooting, I was like, okay, this is the time for the chips. I got to change up my food. This is the time for new music. This is the time to like pray. This is the time to post on Instagram and give somebody an update. Like this is the time. Troubleshoot your mentality. And so I did that, and then started lap 4. I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a little bit more Tylenol. So I took 2 more Tylenols beginning of lap 4, and that's the point where I was like, okay, I'm entering into compete mode because I know at this point I can complete the race. Like I know fully what to expect. I know the course like by the back of my hand at this point because I had already done it 3 times. And so I was like, okay, the first 4 miles are climbing. I cannot compete on a climb. Like that's my worst portion just because I have short legs and like I'm continually getting better at climbing, but I'm not good at it. Consider like relative to other people. But I knew once I got through the first 4 miles of the fourth lap, I could start competing. And so once I hit that downhill portion that I knew about, I was like, all right, turn it on. Here we go. Change the music again, put on my like weight room music, which is like more like hard rock. And I was like, this is your time. Kels, like you got to push. So the last 4 miles, I passed 4 people. I was so proud of myself. Obviously that's not like I'm sprinting for 4 miles. Like I'm making really calculated decisions on like when I'm jogging, when I'm walking. It's another thing like people do not understand on trail races. Like you walk so much. Like you're not running fast. You're running very slow the entire time, or you're walking, you're hiking. It's just like a pure endurance event that you're doing, that you're completing. But yeah, I passed 4 people at the end. I was so excited about it. 2 were guys. No, 3 were guys. 1 was a girl. So I was so just like proud of myself for like being able to turn that on. And then when I hit the last like 200 yards and I saw the little blow up thing, I was like, the tears just came mainly because I was like so stinking proud of myself. I had done a 50K like 6 years ago, but my mental game wasn't very good. Like I'm great. I checked the box. I completed it, but like I didn't learn anything about myself or my life. Well, I did. Like I did gain some confidence from that. But in regards to like racing again, like I finished that race and I was like, never again. I'll do that. I'll never do that again. Because I didn't go into that race with a good race plan. But I started crying when I was crossing the finish line, which those pictures are on Instagram at this point, because I was like, I built so much trust with myself and my capabilities the last 9 hours that I was running. And I talk about this so much with my clients. Like, if you don't set yourself up to trust yourself, then you'll continually fail yourself. And that grows over time, and I know myself. And the reality is like, I have built trust for weeks and weeks and weeks, months and months and months at this point. I think I'm on week, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 of running and like training with George as my coach. And like every single day when I go out and I train, I am creating trust between myself and my capabilities so that when I'm done and I check that little box, I say, Kelsey, you're good. Like you just build a little confidence today. You put a little something in the bank. You trust yourself. Like you don't need to give up on yourself. And so when I crossed that finish line, I had so much trust built up with myself. I was like, I'm not failing. I'm not failing. I'm not going to do it. And so I just was like so proud of myself. And I don't think I have felt that proud of myself physically since college. To be like, that's a really raw thing to say, when I graduated college, like, I don't know, 7 years ago. So at that, I have been trying to figure out where my physical confidence will come from the last 6 or 7 years. And I feel like I finally tapped back into that. And this is why this is addicting. Winning, not that I won anything, but like winning is addicting. And on the back end of that, like you never want that to be your identity. But at the same time, like I think my demeanor and my mentality is so much better in regards to like me being in the weight room and reflecting love for exercise and gratitude is so much different now than it has been the last 6 or 7 years. And that's been like a very hard process. And the key component to that is like I finally got to a point where I was okay hiring a coach. And that's obviously made all the difference. I honestly think if I didn't hire George, I would be setting myself up for failure leading up to a 50 miler. And I would not have been as diligent at creating those like trust patterns with myself and my ability to go out and do something day in and day out. And I think that's like what really was like riding on it was purchasing like a coach and having somebody else external invest in me. So yeah, I just like started crying. There was a photographer there. Like he took amazing pictures and I'm so glad I had those pictures like documented of just again, how proud of myself I was and like how raw that moment was. But what people didn't see is like people didn't see the last 6 or 7 years, like me crying in the weight room, like when I'm all alone because I was so disappointed in myself because I knew where I had come from. I knew I was tough. And I knew that like maybe compared to the regular population, like maybe I was fit, maybe I was healthy, but like I wasn't proud of myself. And so when you see those pictures of yourself or when you accomplish something like a good physical feat and you feel that confidence come back and you're proud of yourself again, like it just starts to well up, you know? And like people don't know that unless they, oh, I think I just broke something. People don't know that unless they listen to this podcast. And I think that's more of the parts that I talk about of like the raw sides that people don't realize. And I'm probably not going to share all of that on Instagram just because I'm just like not ready for that. Which, speaking of, I did get a couple text messages after my like birthday podcast episode that I put up when I was saying like, no crap, Denise. Like when you put up I think I'm breaking this thing. Oops. Okay, I'm just gonna stop touching it. When like somebody puts up like a low point on Instagram and then people like flood their direct messages of like, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're perfect. And then Denise is like, I feel amazing. And I'm like, well, no crap. Like you just put something up so that people could like affirm you. And that sounded really harsh. And I knew it was gonna sound harsh. And I got a couple text messages after I posted it. I think what I really meant to say was like deep down, I have a very small inner circle, mainly my husband and occasionally like some friends that I share like those hardest moments with. For example, like the crying in the weight room moments, you know, that I've had over the years of like just me wanting to be proud of myself again. And that I think that does naturally happen after you're like a competitive athlete. Like when you're no longer finding those moments to be proud of yourself physically for, and like you don't get the wins, you don't get the highs, like that feels so low. And I work in strength conditioning and I felt that. Um, and so I think when I like want to show like tougher moments on Instagram, the reality is like I'm only showing those tough moments to my close inner circle, and I don't really want, like, for example, okay, I'll give an example. Maybe I share something like difficult on Instagram and I'm like raw and real. The reality is like people follow me on Instagram that I see in regular life, but they're not in my inner circle. And I don't find that to be like a and not in a bad or a good way. Like I don't find that to be like a trusting enough relationship where I want that person knowing that information about myself. And in real life, like I don't want to open that door for that person to speak into my life about this particular topic. If that makes it, like this is all hypothetical, but that's kind of how I feel. So it's like if most of the people that follow me on Instagram are people I'm going to see in real life, like I don't want those people knowing this information about myself because I don't want them speaking into me. And I know I'm like guarding my heart so harshly in that way. And I don't necessarily need to say sorry for it because I don't think I'm necessarily wrong. But I guess I just wanted to add that on there because I did get some text messages because I sounded harsh, I think, on that last episode. But I think I did conclude like that was my own problem and I need to just like move on when I see that on Instagram. But the reality is like I want to show harder moments maybe through my podcast, especially with working out, because I think a lot of times like I can get really wrapped up in being excited about the things that I'm doing. Not that I'm trying to give off a fake life, but I get really excited about the things that I'm doing. And I want people to be excited with me. And I just naturally kind of neglect the points that can be kind of difficult. And I want to show that like I am a normal person. Like I am a normal person. Like I work in strength conditioning. I still have really difficult moments like with body image. Or I still have really difficult moments with like wishing that I could do better things, bigger and better things like physically, you know? And like when you are a coach and your body is a reflection of your discipline and your work that you can put in, like it is your walking resume. That can get really difficult. Really, really, really freaking difficult. And I think those are the moments that I want to talk about a little bit more, not necessarily like the personal things that like only my inner circle knows about me. So I just want to maybe make that distinction a little bit. Um, I'm trying to think if there's any last second details about the race. But that night we went into Greensboro, found a food hall, ate my life away of pizza and barbecue. It was amazing. It was amazing. See, I'm saying amazing again. And then the next day I was pretty sore, but I was less sore than I was anticipating. So that's a really good sign. My HRV was pretty wrecked on my Aura ring for a couple days, but got that bad boy back up and I'm ready to go again. My next race is in 2 weeks, Terrapin Mountain 50K up in Virginia. I ran the half marathon of that race last year, so I somewhat know what to expect. And it's pretty tradition that you sleep like you camp the night before in the parking lot. So it'll be a whole experience again, which I'm very excited about. Yeah. And I'll give you guys some updates as I go. But shameless plug, because you're listening, my workout memberships are doing amazing. I have over 50 women now in my workout memberships, and seeing their wins, seeing their questions, seeing their curiosities, and having them on monthly Zoom calls has been amazing. It has been so fulfilling, and yeah, I wish I had better words for it. But man, we're talking like everything from like maintenance calories, deficit calories. They also have access to the Crunchy Company nutrition database on my membership website. And it's pretty all inclusive. I also did see that like a lot of other workout memberships cost nowadays like $40 to $50 a month. That includes zero nutrition information. And mine's $22 a month. It includes a Zoom call with me and nutrition information on my Crunchy Company member site. So I'm just going to say I've made it affordable on purpose so nobody can have an excuse. And I want to make it accessible. And it's very accessible. It's very doable and easy. And the ladies are doing great. And I'm so grateful for it. I'm reading a couple books right now, per usual. I have just started a book called Crucial Conversations. I got it from a social worker that I work with. This book, sorry, I'm looking at it here. Crucial Conversations, third edition, Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. It's talking about like workplace, like difficult conversations or even within your family. And so far, I've really enjoyed it. I'm only a couple pages in, but gosh, like it is already a wealth of information. And so far I would recommend it. Crucial Conversations. If you have a hard time, like with coworkers, like something needs to be addressed in a workspace or in the workplace or with family, I can definitely recommend that book. And then I am on Audible finishing up Practicing the Way by John Mark Comer. I have already said a million times that The Ruthless Elimination to Hurry by John Mark Comer is my all-time favorite book. So I love John Mark Comer so much, and I'm listening to his Audible called Practicing the Way about becoming a disciple of Jesus and what that really looks like. And so I will link both of those books in the show notes. Thanks for listening to my race recap. Have a wonderful evening. Talk to you soon. Bye.